We must remember that we are servants in this place. We have a job to do on behalf of the people who sent us here. Our personal dramas are not important. The dramas that should seize all of our concern and imagination are the daily dramas of the working women and men that build this country. We are in it for them. We're going to give them back control of their lives in the freest country on earth, Canada. Let's bring it home.
Yeah! Come on, get up, Lambert.
But even without that bill, there are a lot of censorship apparatuses already in effect, whether it's human rights commissions and tribunals or, frankly, the media subsidy, which is another kind of corrosion of free press. I mean, you could use a carrot of censorship or a stick of subsidies. How big of a deal is that in Canada? And do you think Pierre Poilievre will be any better if he becomes Prime Minister on the issue of free speech?
So Bill C-63, if I understand, is the online harms bill.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, sorry. Exactly. The one that.
I just, hard to follow with all the numbers.
Yeah, there's so many numbers.
But yeah, it's going to be devastating, and I cannot even believe that someone would even come up with something so preposterous and draconian when already our individual liberties and our right to free expression is under threat, and has been, as we saw during the truckers' protest, which led to the debanking of some protesters by our former finance minister, Chrystia Freeland. The point is the state of free speech in Canada is so weak, and then on top of that, we're imposing this legislation, this proposed legislation. This is the kind of stuff that you see in authoritarian tin pot dictatorships in the third world, and I never imagined in my life, in the nearly 30 years that I've lived in this country, that the craziness, the insanity that I left behind is now here, and it's taking root here in a way that I never even expected, and the dissent, the opposition to this, is to me, you asked me about Pierre Poilievre. He does say that Canada should be the free. He wants to restore Canada to being one of the freest country in the world. I do think that Canada at one point was a very, very free country. I would say I've pointed this out several times. We were at one point even more libertarian than the U.S., but things really, really changed, especially under Trudeau Sr. And things have been going downhill since then. And then governments in those intervening years, whether liberal or conservative, I don't think they took these issues very seriously, which is why we are here in this situation in the first place. In a sense, I feel that the Canadian public has been primed to have more government in their lives. I remember 20 years ago in grad school, I stood out as I was seen as a heretic. I was seen as, an oddball for talking about the things that we're talking about now. But the chickens have come home to roost. I do wish that the Conservative Party was a little more clear on things like censorship. I do wish that they would articulate that more clearly. So I know exactly where they stand. It's not just good enough to say I'm going to make Canada the freest country in the world. What does that mean exactly?
Met another guy at the La Brat Brewery a few days ago, and you can watch the video of me talking with him. He walked up to me and he said, I have 3 jobs and I can't make it. We're renting. We have no hope. We've given up on ever owning a home. We're renting. We can barely make it. And he said to me, I feel ashamed when I talk to my kids because they ask me why I'm never around and why we can never have a house. And I feel like a failure. But he didn't fail. He has been failed. That's right. He has been robbed of the promise of Canada. It was a very simple promise that if you worked hard, you got a good life. Now, it wasn't fancy or extravagant, but you got a house with a yard where you could have kids playing safely, and you could have a nice dog that you could afford to feed along with the kids, and your kids could play safely in the streets. That was the promise. Now, politicians break promises all the time, but you know what was bad about this promise? This promise didn't belong to this Prime Minister. It wasn't his promise to break. It belonged to all of us. And our purpose is to bring home that promise for that young man, that young father, and that older female worker, so that they can once again take back control of their lives, live in a safe country where their hard work earns them a good wage, where their rent and their food is affordable, and where when they go to bed at night, they know that they will be safe throughout their sleep and that they will have their car in their driveway in the morning. A country where people are proud again to fly the flag, where they know the government is a servant and not a master, where they understand that every day the Commons, this place, works for the common people, not for the ego of one man desperate to cling on to his job. We must remember that we are servants in this place. We have a job to do on behalf of the people who sent us here. Our personal dramas are not important. The dramas that should seize all of our concern and imagination are the daily dramas of the working women and men that build this country. We are in it for them. We're going to give them back control of their lives in the freest country on earth, Canada. Let's bring it home.
Hey, come on, get up, Lammer.
And so, I'd like a little more clarity on that, on those statements. I do hope that Mr. Poilievre, stays true to his word, and won't take us down this path of to more censorship. The problem with a lot of this legislation is that once it becomes law, once it becomes policy, it's very difficult to reverse it. We've seen this. It's not just unique. It's not just unique to Canada. I've seen this in other places as well. Once you have something in place, it's very difficult to reverse it. So the question is, how do we see the next government restore our rights and freedoms? That's one of the biggest questions for me. There are all kinds of other issues that animate me as well, but I want to see. Mr. Poilievre is going to have lots of challenges on his hand. The economy, for one thing. Our GDP growth, per capita GDP growth, has stagnated. Immigration is an issue, and we're basically in a state of crisis right now. And a lot of that I think needs to be, he's got his plate full for sure, but I do think as well that we need a leader who is going to make us less socialized, who's going to argue for less socialism in our lives. And that is something that I'm very passionate about that. Where is Mr. Poilievre's position on supply management, for example, on the dairy industry? Why do we have a cartel there? Where does he stand on the cartel that exists with airlines or in the telecom industry? Where does the Conservative Party stand on healthcare? I'd like to have a private option. Why do I have to go overseas to see a family doctor? I've been waiting for a family doctor for 15 years. This is unacceptable, and these are issues that I really think we need the Conservative Party to tell us where they stand on these things, on these issues. What are their proposals? How do they plan on fixing these issues? How does the Conservative Party plan on fixing the problem that I and so many other Canadians don't have access to a family doctor?
Hearing you list those things, supply management, healthcare, those are age-old problems that I think a lot of freedom-oriented people just said, well, we're doomed to have those forever. There's no way those can change. It's like the mountains. They'll always be there. But when I look south of the border and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have been appointed by Donald Trump to head something they call the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. And they're talking about hacking away entire agencies. It's very bold. I don't know if they'll actually be able to do it. I mean, there's a lot of other checks and balances in the American system. I wonder if you think, I think Pierre Poilievre's going to get a huge majority. I think he's going to have a very strong mandate. But he's going to have a lot of checks and balances on him too. The Senate, for one thing, the courts, the civil service and their public sector unions. Do you think that besides tackling inflation, the deficit, immigration, the anti-Semitic crime wave, do you think he'll have enough political capital to also take on the dairy cartel, which irritates everyone, but there's a lot of votes in Quebec for it? Do you think he'll have the power and the energy to take on healthcare? Because even though everyone knows our healthcare is broken, it still has sort of a magical aura to it. I mean, I think almost everything needs to be fixed. What do you think should be the top priority? Because what you've just described, those are very real issues, but would they make the top 5 things Poilievre had to do? Would they be that high a priority?
Yeah. So I think they're all related. I don't think that I don't think it should be business as usual anymore, Ezra.
On the ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.